This is wild. Even after 27 years, no arrest, no justice, and no closure. Just a name people whisper in true crime circles. The Black Dahlia. But this wasn't just a murder, it was something else. She was butchered, drained, and posted like a public display. Brutal, deliberate, and almost theoretical. But here's the real question: who hated Elizabeth Short that much? And how did LAPD, one of the most ruthless police forces in America, drop the ball this badly? Because this wasn't some sloppy crime. It was clean, precise, and almost ritualistic. Now here's where it gets even more disturbing. The killer might have been a doctor, a respected one with connections, or maybe protected by the very system that was supposed to expose him. Just picture it. He could have been watching the headlines unfold, reading in paper, sipping scotch in Beverly Hills, completely untouchable. And the scariest part, what if the truth didn't die with her? What if it was buried by the people who promised to uncover it? This is the story of Black Dahlia, the most notorious unsolved mystery in Hollywood history. It all started on a cold, quiet morning on January 15th, 1947. South of Los Angeles was still waking up. The sky was clear, the streets were dead silent. Nothing moved, nothing stand out. Until a young mother and a daughter turned onto Northern Avenue just for a regular walk. But then, something in an empty lot caught her eye. She stopped and stared. Lying there in the grass, pale, almost too perfect, what she thought was a mannequin. But as she stepped closely, cautiously, curiously, almost unwillingly, her stomach turned. It wasn't plastic, it was flesh. A woman's body, cleanly sliced in half at the waist, arms stretched over her head, legs separated apart. This was not just a murder, it was like a piece of performance art soaked in horror. And here's the kicker: there wasn't a drop of blood anywhere around her, which means she wasn't killed there. She was killed somewhere else and brought here deliberately, carefully. Now you're thinking, who has done that? This wasn't just an homicide. This was a production. The kind pulled off by someone who wasn't just a killer, but a sadist, a showman, someone who wanted the world to look. And remember, this is not a crime. This is a message. And Los Angeles was about to get into the media storm it would have never seen. But who was Elizabeth Short? The woman behind the headlines, behind the horror, before she became the Black Dahlia, before her name turned into a crime documentary and Reddit threads. Elizabeth Short was just a girl, 22, from Massachusetts. Big green, soft voice, Hollywood stardust in her eyes. She wasn't famous yet, unless you count filtration and failed auditions. But she looked the part, elegant, poised, always dressed in black, not because she was quiet before it was cool, but she wanted to stand out. Some people called her charming, others said manipulative. Some said she was just a party girl trying to make it. Others whispered she was a lost soul bouncing from couch to couch, lover to lover, chasing something or maybe running from something. And the truth is, no one really knew her. She was this walking contradiction, glamorous, mysterious, fragile, fearless, and that made her interesting to everyone, especially to the wrong kind of men. Even in life, she was hard to pin down, and in death, she became something else entirely, a symbol, a myth. Her murder case so twisted, it turned her into the most famous annoying woman in America. And that's the irony, right? She came to Hollywood chasing fame, and she got it, just not the way she wanted. So, where did she come from? This mysterious, misunderstood girl who ended up as Black Dahlia. Not Hollywood, not even close. Elizabeth Short grew up in Massachusetts, Medford, to be Exact. A far cry from Beverly Hills. No movie stars, no palm trees, just cold winters, tight budgets, and five daughters crammed into a modest home. She was the third of five girls born in 1924, raised by a single mother who did what she could have to hold the family together. And here's where it gets even dark early. When Elizabeth was 6, her dark heart was abandoned on a bridge. Everyone assumed the worst, suicide, the Depression era tragedy. End of the story, right? No. Turns out, Cleo Short didn't die. He just disappeared, ditched his entire family, faked his death like it was some kind of Houdini stunt. So, yeah, her dad became a ghost, the first man to vanish on Earth. And maybe that's why where the whole mystery around Elizabeth really began at a very young age, but not in Hollywood, but in her own living room. Her life started with betrayal, and somehow the theme never left her. But even with all the chaos, ghost dad, struggling mom, five sisters, and a boatload of emotional baggage, Elizabeth never stopped dreaming. She was a full blown romantic, a dreamer with star in her eyes and drama in her bones. While most kids were out playing, she was glued to the local cinema, staring up at the silver screen goddess like she was the royal. Eyes were wide, mind racing. She didn't just watch movies, she studied them. Every pose, every expression, every soft smile behind the fluttering lashes. She wasn't trying to survive Medford. She was rehearsing for her escape. In a quiet of a room with a dim mirror and a ton of imagination, she practiced movie star poses like she was already famous. She kept scrapbooks, doodle scenes on herself in a glamorous roles, probably convinced Hollywood would discover her any day. And honestly, that was her whole plan. She was not looking for a job or to settle down, but to be seen, to be wanted, to be that somebody. Because after being abandoned by her father and overlooked by the world, Elizabeth Short didn't just want a better life, she wanted attention. But let's be real, Medford wasn't Hollywood, not even close. While Elizabeth was busy practicing red carpet poses in a bedroom mirror, reality was a bit less glamorous. She was pale, pretty, jet black hair, like she would have been famous, but her body had other plans. She had chronic bronchitis, which is like asthma, and winters in Massachusetts, absolutely brutal on her lungs. By the time she was teen, her health was bad enough that she started spending winters in Florida, staying with family friends, chasing warmth, and probably getting a first real state of freedom. School, yeah, that didn't really work out. Maybe it was the illness. Maybe she was just bored with algebra and small town expectation. Either way, she dropped out. Because while her mom and sister clung to stability, to survival, Elizabeth wanted out. She didn't want a normal. She didn't want to marry a local guy and raise five kids in cold New England town. She wanted California. She wanted sunshine. She wanted stardom. And her name lights. Not out of ego, but maybe out of urgency. Like if she did not become somebody fast, she would disappear just like her father did. And then, just when she thought she was stuck in a cold forever, a letter arrived. Guess from whom? Cleo Short. Yes, the ghost dad. Back from dead, writing it from sunny California with a half-hearted apology and an offer, come stay with me. And Elizabeth, she jumped at it. It was a golden ticket she had been waiting for. In December 1942, she boarded across the country bus, 18 years old, a suitcase in her hand, heart full of Hollywood fantasies. She imagined a heartfelt reunion, tears, forgiveness, maybe even her dad helping her get a foot into a movie business. What she got instead was reality. Leo wasn't in Hollywood. He was holed up near San Francisco, living a quiet little life, and not exactly thrilled to have a moody teenage daughter show up at his doorstep. At first, she moved into a tiny bungalow, but years later of silence, all they shared was unresolved argument. They argued constantly about friends, about money, and her staying out late and dreaming too loud. Within months, it was done. Elizabeth had to pack her things with what little she had and walked out alone, barely an adult, in a massive, unfamiliar state, with no money, no plan, and no backup. The California dream? Yes, it hit her like a slap. She did not find start, but she found the same thing again, and it was loneliness. But this time it was very personal for her. But did she go crawling back to No, not a chance, because she had a big dreams, right? Pride and ambition was always within her. She wasn't about to let a failed father, a broken dream, and a few arguments end up packing. So she stayed. She drifted to California, hustling to stay afloat. Mailroom job at an Air Force base, waitressing at some no-name diner. Nothing stuck, nothing satisfied. For a while, she moved in with an Army Air Force segregant, a classic wartime romance. Except this one came with a dark twist. He was controlling, violent, and made her life miserable. Turns out, the Golden State could be just as cruel as a small town Massachusetts, just with palm trees. By mid 1943, the California dream has crumbled. By mid 1943, the California dream has crumbled. And then came the night that pushed her off the map. Caught drinking underage at a Santa Barbara bar, she was 19, broke, and now in handcuffs. It was the first and only time she had made the papers while she was alive. Blunt about a wayward girl, that's it. No headlines, no fashion blog, just one-way ticket back east. Dreams postponed, reputation buried. She returned to Medford, not as a rising star, but a small town scandal. Still, even after all that, she refused to give up. She pivoted again, this time to Florida. The warm weather helped her lungs, and the military boys proved plenty of social distraction. She cleaned up her look, styled her hair, slipped into those signature black dresses, and started turning heads again. She wasn't famous, but she was noticed, and for Elizabeth, that was enough to keep going. And then finally, a glimpse of something real. As said earlier, the Army Air Force pilot, Major Matthew Gordon, a war hero, old and dashing guy, basically living like a movie character. They fell in love with each other, the wartime romances, letters, weekend visits, promises of forever. Elizabeth told her friends that she both were engaged, that he was going to make a honest woman out of her when he returned from war. For once, it looked like a story might have a happy ending, but fate, because of course, had other plans. August 1945, just as the war ended, telegram lands like a grenade. Matthew Gordon was dead. Plane crashes, gone. And just like that, everything she had been holding on to love, marriage, stability, maybe even her shot at a real California life has been evaporated into a thin air. Friends said she wasn't never the same after that. And honestly, how could someone be the same after losing the loved ones? And in Elizabeth's life particularly, her father ghosted her, her health failed her, Hollywood ignored her, and now the man who thought she would save her has gone. She was 21, she was broken, she was alone, and more lost than ever. But if there was one thing Elizabeth Short knew how to do, is only about how to get up. She has been dumped, ditched, arrested, and devastated. And yet somehow she wasn't done. In July of 1946, with the war finally over and Hollywood buzzing with the post-war energy, she decided it was a time for round two. This time, she aimed straight for the heart of it, Los Angeles. She was older now, a little wiser, definitely more tragic. She carried the aura of the doomed romantic, the beautiful young woman who lost her war hero, the kind of heartbroken placed well in Hollywood, and Elizabeth knew it. Hollywood in 1947, it was glittery and grit in the same place. Glamour on one corner, desperation on the next. And into this chaotic jungle walked Elizabeth Short. She arrived in the summer, chasing the same dream she had been chasing her whole life. Only now, she had something extra in her toolkit: heartbreak. She was a tragic widow who never got to a wedding, who lost her hero in a crash plane overseas. A story alone could sell drinks, earn sympathy, and maybe even open a few doors. But there's the problem. Hollywood had a million girls just like her, and Elizabeth, she did not even have a studio contract. She did not have a family money. She just had a suitcase, a few photos of Matthew Gordon, and a stubborn refusal to fade into the background. For a while, she floated. A few weeks here, a few weeks there, crashing on girlfriends' couches, cheap motels, strangers' spare room. She never stayed anywhere long enough to unpack, but she always stayed just long enough to survive. She became a master and a polite gratitude, always smiling, always sweet, always saying just enough to keep the invites coming. She lived out of the suitcase like it was a second nature. Black dresses folded neatly, lipstick always fresh. Her life was absolute chaotic. Her appearance was immaculate. Money, it was a nightmare for her. The odd waitress job came and went, but LA eats money like a candy, and she was always a few dollars short. So she adapted. Elizabeth wasn't selling herself, not exactly, but she knew how to work a room. She went on dates, a lot of them. Dinner, drinks, maybe a movie, a little charm in exchange for a warm meal. It wasn't romance, it was survival, packed with eyeliner and soft laugh. To some men, she was a mystery. Others thought she's untouchable. To others, especially jealous women, she was a manipulator, a girl who would use your couch, your kindness, your wallet, then disappear like a breeze. And she told stories, big ones. A big movie deal is coming, a major audition, a glamorous role just around the corner. But the truth is, she never had a single acting credit. The closest she got to Hollywood was walking past the studio gates. But in the post-war, images were everything, so she made one. Jet black hair styled in soft waves, black dresses, always black, dark eyeliner, pale skin, mystery in her voice. She looked like she stepped out of a poster. She did not blend in, she stood out, and that's all she ever wanted. People started calling her the Black Dahlia, a nickname she reportedly loved, got it from her dark wardrobe and a hit film, The Blue Dahlia. It wasn't fame, but it was something. But behind that crafted persona was a girl barely holding it together. She was 22. No home, no family, no real plan. Every night she played the role of the glamorous party girl, but when the jazz clubs closed, she had nowhere to sleep. That act crumbled. One friend remembers seeing her sitting alone at a dinner past midnight, staring into a cold cup of coffee she wouldn't afford to refill. Eyes hollow, smiles gone, just empty. This was the real Elizabeth, not the femme fatale in black, not in Hollywood flirt. Just a lost girl wondering if she would made the biggest mistake of her life. And yet, she kept chasing the dream, even when it was clearly a mirage. But by the end of 1946, everything was unraveling. Broke, burnt out of options. She left LA for San Diego, staying with yet another person who took pity on her. She told her mother she was thriving, living by the beach. It was all lies. She told it anyway because in Elizabeth's world, hope was a performance too. And then came the final chapter. In January 1947, she returned to LA with a man she barely knew, Robert Red, a 25-year-old married salesman who thought she was special. Maybe he expected something romantic. But Elizabeth, as always, she kept strict rules. On 9th of January, she dropped her out of the Blitmore Hotel in downtown LA. She told him she was meeting her sister. She wasn't. Her sister was almost 3,000 miles away in Massachusetts. She had no plan, no appointment, no one waiting. She checked the bags, waited in the lobby, then walked out the front door and into the dark. And 6 days, nothing. She just disappeared. No calls, no reports, no search. Because in LA, girls like Elizabeth vanish all the time. Broke, alone. Who would even notice? No one even filed a report. No one rang the alarm. For nearly a week, she became what she feared the most, invisible. Until she turned up, cut in half, on display, staring back at the city that had ignored her. So, 6 days after she vanished, Elizabeth's short body was found, carved in half, drained out of blood, and displayed like a twisted art installation. And just like that, the hunt begins. Not just for the killer, but for the truth. But here's the thing, this wasn't any average wound unit. It was a public and a media circus. And somewhere between the headlines, the truth got buried. There were many theories. The theory one, let's start with this most popular one, the doctor. This one still sends shivers through your spine. The idea that the killer wasn't just sick, he was killed. The body was sliced with surgical precision. No mess, no hesitation. Whoever did this definitely knew the anatomy, specifically how to bisect a body cleanly at the lumbar spine without hitting the bone. Not exact common knowledge that led LAPD investigations to suspect a doctor or at least someone with serious medical training. On the other hand, a name rose to the top, Dr. George Hodel. Well, we'll get back to him in a minute. And the second theory was the jealous lover. Others believed Elizabeth was murdered by a man she rejected. Let's be real, she had admirers, a lot of them. Some she dated, most she did not. And rejections, especially in the 1940s Hollywood, could turn violent really fast. A few exes and friendly male friends became immediate suspect. One even confessed, but later cleared when the timeline did not match. Still, the theory stuck. Someone got obsessed, got angry, and decided he could not have her. No one could. So, coming to the doctor, the George. George was a brilliant, wealthy, twisted physician who hosted wild sex parties in the creepy Spanish mansion in LA. Years later, his son Steve, who became an LAPD homicide detective, would accuse his father of being the Black Dahlia killer. Why? Because his father knew who Elizabeth Short was. He had a surgical training. He lived literally minutes away from where the body was found and had a criminal record, including accusations of sexual abuse. And get this, when police bugged in his home in 1950, George was caught on a tape saying, "Supposing I killed the Black Dahlia." They could not prove it now. They can't talk to my secretary because she is dead. Yes, yeah, he actually said that. But here's the catch. The George Hodel was never charged, never arrested. He packed his bag and fled to Asia, living in luxury for years. Did he get away with the murder? A lot of people think so. There were too many suspects, too many theories, too many distractions. The evidence was tainted, the crime scene contaminated, leads went cold, witnesses vanished. The LAPD, under pressure from the press and politics, fumbled the ball hard. To this day, the case remains officially unsolved. Let us talk a bit more about Dr. George. Things stopped feeling like a theory and started feeling like a cover up. He was smart, rich, and absolutely terrifying. He threw parties with the surrealistic artists, influentials, intellectuals, and underage girls. His house in Los Angeles, straight out of a horror movie. Dark corner, secret hallways, and vibes that scream something bad happened here. In 1945, George was already being investigated for sexual abuse of his teenage daughter. LAPD bugged his house with hidden microphones, and the things they recorded chilling. Supposing I did kill the Black Dahlia, he actually said that on tape in his house while being watched. There were reports of a woman screaming, a shovel digging, then silence. But there's the kicker, nothing happened. Despite all of this, George Hodel wasn't charged with Elizabeth murder. Why? Because he was powerful, connected, and possibly protected. His sons included city officials, lawyers, even cops. He knew how to cover his tracks, and when things got too hot, he vanished overseas, living for decades in luxury. His own son Steve spent 20 years building a case against him. He wrote one of the bestsellers, gave lectures, connected dots even LAPD missed. To this day, Steve's theory is the one of the most compelling, and honestly, if George didn't kill Elizabeth Short, he might have been the one weird enough to take a credit for it anyway. But if it wasn't him, then the biggest mystery isn't who killed her, it's who got away with it. And that's the story of Elizabeth Short, not just the Black Dahlia, not just the victim, but a girl who came to Hollywood chasing stardom and got turned into headline. The truth, it was never just about her death. It was about what her death exposed. A city obsessed with beauty and did not care what it cost. A system built to protect power, not justice, and girls lost in LA shadows while the cameras kept flashing. 70 years later, still there's no closure, no arrest, no peace. Just a haunting smile frozen in time, and a question that refuses to die. Who killed the Black Dahlia?